Welcome to Bet On It, powered by Wager Talk TV. I am Kelly Stewart. We've got a lot to go over today. We've got some primetime games, some TNA, prop shop. We're going to find out if the deli is back open. Las Vegas, Cris joins us with some teachable moments and, of course, some best bets to finish up the show. Let's bring in Marco D'Angelo and Joe Raineri. Thursday night, Denver at Kansas City. Kansas City, a 10.5-point favorite. Total 47.5. This one's gross. I told everybody I'm not laying points with the Denver Broncos, and they proved me right once again last week. Now, line seems a little interesting there in Arrowhead. Travis Kelce's a little banged up. Marco, what are your thoughts on Thursday Night Football?
Well, Kelly, if this wouldn't be a Thursday night game, I would not be talking about the Denver Broncos because they are on my, you know what list after last week. I went with Denver, full disclosure, last week. I thought that it was the good spot for them. They finally got a win playing at home against the Jets. We know Sean Payton made the comments during preseason about Nathaniel Hackett and everything. Well, looks like Nathaniel Hackett got the last laugh. But as we look at this Denver Bronco team, and as I said, they were going to be on my do not play list. But how many times have we seen a team that is looking just pitiful lands on a nationally televised game, and all of a sudden they play their guts out? We saw that last Thursday night with the Chicago Bears. I was on the Bears, and we cashed that one. Can the Broncos do it this week? Coming into the season, the MO on the Broncos was this. This is a team that had been struggling offensively, but had a good defense. Well, in comes Sean Payton, and everybody figured that would fix all the problems. Well, he's actually has kind of fixed the offense. Would you believe that the Denver Broncos, their offense this year is in the top 5 in yards per play? They're in the top 10 in points scored. I wouldn't believe that, but what I wouldn't believe even worse is that defense that we talked about that was supposed to be the strength of this team is freaking dead last. Dead last in yards per play and dead last in points allowed. Now, something's got to give here on Thursday Night Football. Kansas City, yeah, they got wins the last couple weeks. They haven't been overly impressive, but they got the W's. That's all that matters. But back-to-back road games and traveling home on a short week to play on Thursday night just gives me a little bit of a pause. This is a division game. You're going to put the gun to my head, and that's what it's going to take for me to get to the window. I lean to Denver plus the points here, only because, like I said, it's their first nationally televised game of the season. We're going to see Sean Payton and all of the talking that he did in the offseason. At some point, if you're going to do the talk, you got to walk the walk, and he hasn't yet. Let's see if he can keep them competitive in this one. Weak vote. Kansas City wins it 30-24. I'll take the double digits with the Broncos.
You know, Marco, that was a bad analogy, but as a Broncos fan, just put me out of my misery because I am not touching that one. Joe Raineri, this is a divisional game that used to be really fun, and now it has just been absolutely and utterly lopsided for 15 games in a row. Tell me why.
Disgusting.
On earth anybody would want to take the Broncos.
Yeah, listen, well, I'll tell you this. Road divisional underdogs of 10 or more points. They have covered at a clip of 56% over the last 5 years. So we have seen this be a spot where, yes, Denver does cover. In fact, Denver has had pretty good success against Kansas City as of recently, too. Certainly last year, I believe Russell Wilson did a pretty good job, and they were terrible last year, but they still did a pretty good job of staying within the number here. But with that defense of Denver, now granted, they did get a lot of guys back against the Jets that they didn't have. They got a couple of their linebackers back. They got some help in the secondary. It didn't really matter because Breece Hall just ran all over them anyway. But Kansas City is notorious for this, right? Here's what they do, and we've seen the total crater in this one. 51 and a half. is what we were looking at. And I think now we're down to 47.5. And it makes sense because nobody blows teams out in the first half and then takes the air out of the ball in the second half like Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. It is their MO. It is exactly what they do. They slow it down to a crawl in the second half. And quite honestly, I think we've seen what Russell Wilson is capable of in the second half against the Jets. How much fun was that? Looked like he never played the game before. I agree with the under in this one. I don't think there's any way else other to look at it. I don't think this is going to be a track meet. It's a Thursday night game, which I hate always looking at overs anyway. But I do think Kansas City goes about its business. They have a 2-touchdown lead going into the second half, and they milk it for all it's worth. And before you know it, we're under 47.5, and that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I kind of would have to agree with Joe there. But since we're on the subject of bad defenses, let's go on to the Sunday night primetime game. The Giants are 14-point underdogs at Buffalo, total 45. Joe, God bless the Giants. So bad, so bad, this team. Yet the Bills had the Jags on bright and early in London on Sunday morning. Got a nice win there, but all due to that Bills defense, really.
Yeah, and they are hurting right now. They lost a couple of more vital pieces there. The good news is they get Von Miller back, which is great news for them. But they are literally holding auditions right now at MetLife with the New York Giants. And anybody that is over 280 pounds wants to play offensive line for them. You got a jersey, you'll get a locker. They'll throw in a couple of tickets. Whatever it is that you need, they are desperate for help right now. They are banged up all over the place, including Daniel Jones, the guy they just gave $150 million plus to, right? That's right. He may not be able to even play in this game. And if I'm Daniel Jones, I don't want to play in this game because Buffalo's going to be pretty pissed off that they ended up losing that game out in London. I think they break this game into halves, and I am going to look at it as if Buffalo is going to do enough scoring in the first half to get us up and over I believe it's 22.5 right now, somewhere in that ballpark there. I think the first half total is the way to look. Expect there to be Buffalo coming out at home, throwing the ball, moving the ball at will, scoring their points, and then expect a same type of thing. Avoid the injuries in the second half, take the air out of the ball, run it with Cook. And I think when it's all said and done, I don't want anything to do with the second half in a blowout game, but I do want the over in the first half with Buffalo good for at least 21 of those 22.5 points that the total is.
Marco D'Angelo, if it is Tyrod Taylor come Sunday night, how much of a drop-off do you think he is from the superstar, $160 million man, Daniel Jones?
I'm not a fan of Daniel Jones at all, and whoever gave him that amount of money should be fired. I'm sorry, okay? I never understood the contract. And Tyrod Taylor, although, obviously he's not made it as a starter in the NFL, he is capable of getting a team competitively in a game. And in this one, I'm looking at it, on paper, it's an absolute mismatch. But you know what? They don't play games on paper. They play them on fields. And here's the situation with the Buffalo Bills. 2 weeks ago, they played the absolute game of the year. Their season would have been almost over had they lost to Miami. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. After that monumental win, then they had to turn around and fly across the pond to play in London. Horrible scheduling spot. We were on Jacksonville last week because of that spot, and Jacksonville got the win. Now you say, okay, well, now they're going to bounce back. Yeah, they're in a spot where it's a bounce back for them, but they got to bounce back after traveling back from the pond from London and play a Sunday night game. The Giants, we talked about it on the Thursday night game with Denver. These teams that are ugly sometimes have a way of stepping up on these nationally televised games. And, if you're the Giants, I know you're 0 for 2 on these televised games. You stunk it up on Sunday night against Dallas to open the season, and then you had that stinker on Monday night when you got blown out against Seattle. This is a team, if you take away the Arizona game where they won 31-28, scored to 31 points, and oh, by the way, they were getting blown out in that game, needed a miracle rally. This is a team in their other 4 games scored 0, 12, 3, and 16. The one thing I'll say about Buffalo is, good as they are, you can run the football against them. There's only one team worse than them at stopping the run yards per play. The problem that happens in that team is Denver. The problem is teams abandon the run. What? Because they get behind and they can't run the football. They got to throw the football and bad things happen. I'm going to look at this one and say the Giants are going to come out and try to run the football. They're going to stay in the game, hopefully in that first half, where they can continue with that game plan before they have to abandon it. And honestly, subconsciously, I never want to see anybody get hurt, but I'm rooting that Tyrod Taylor does start this game because I think they will run the football more. And I think they can stay in this game, shorten that first half. I'm going to take the Giants +8 first half wager. And then after that, they can just suck if they want. I don't care. Just get me to halftime within a touchdown.
Marco, you just want to go to bed early on Sunday night. Yeah. All right, Monday Night Football. Dallas down to 2 on the Wager Talk odds screen at the Los Angeles Chargers. Total 51. Surprised to see some Chargers money come in here. The battle of the brains, Mike McCarthy versus, well, Brandon Staley. I'm not sure I want any part of this one, but Marco, there's a lot of really great teaser opportunities this week in the NFL. I think the Chargers is one of them.
The Chargers are going to be on everybody's teaser list because they score points, Kelly. And, Dallas, the way they've looked 2 of the last 3 weeks, nobody's going to want any part of them. That's when I'm going to step in. And let's be realistic. 3 weeks ago, when they went to Arizona, offensive line was in complete shambles, okay? They went in there. They were coming off a blowout win over the Jets the week before. They were looking at that Arizona team. And remember, at the beginning of the season, everybody was talking about Arizona, tanking and everything else. And people just thought, you know what? We just had to show up. We would win games. Now we've seen the last couple of weeks, that's not the case. Arizona is turning into who we thought they were. Not that they're tanking. They just don't have a lot of talent. Look at last week. They got blown out on Sunday Night Football. But let's be honest. Is there any team in the NFL that has looked or played better than the San Francisco 49ers? They're a complete team right now on both sides of the football. Offensively, defensively, one of the best defenses, if not the best in the league. So Dallas lost, and they lost bad. I look for Dallas. Plus, let's not forget they had 4 turnovers last week. We know in the NFL that anytime you're -3 in the turnover department in the NFL, you're going to lose the football game. That's just a fact. This week, they're going against the Chargers. When was the last time the Chargers really had a good defensive showing? Oh, okay. They stopped the Raiders 17 points. Raiders didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo. For whatever reason, Josh McDaniels decided to start a rookie in his first start rather than a veteran backup that you actually signed because he knew the offense that you were running from New England. You left him on the bench, and they struggled to get 17 points in that game. The Chargers are going to give up points. And I'm just going to give you my caution with the Chargers. If you're taking them on the teaser, they have a tendency to give up a ton of points. And Dallas is a team that got embarrassed last week. They're going to keep their foot on the gas when they can because they know the Chargers are capable of coming from behind. So just be careful with one of those Monday night teasers that we have seen that have looked so good, and you're down to the last minute of the game, sweating profusely to stay within the 8.5 points. You know what I'm talking about, Kelly. I like Dallas in this one. I've got them winning 34-24. So I'm giving that warning on the teaser there with the Chargers because at some point there's going to be a 4th and 2 in his own side of the field, and Brandon Staley's going to go ahead and go for it. And if he makes it, you'll be okay. If he doesn't, well, you know what's going to happen. So give me the Cowboys on Monday night.
High total. It's a poor teaser situation, but Chargers, every game they've been in this year has been within a touchdown. So I'm kind of in that mode of saying, all right, some things stay the same no matter what happens or who they play. This is a poor Justin Herbert, man. I'm just going to say that. Just poor Justin Herbert. I feel for the kid. You know, I really wanted to see them have success there. But yes, Chargers with Bears, Chargers with Commanders. And oh, by the way, Marco, you made fun of me about Monday night. Guess who had both sides of that game in the teaser? So thank you. It might not look that good on Twitter, but I'm not that big of a dumbass. Joe Raineri, talk to me about Monday Night Football.
Still trying not to get crystal-balled. So here's what we have in this game.
Again.
Yeah, exactly. Now I will bust out the tape here in a couple of weeks when we were doing our preseason estimations here. There was somebody on this crew here that bet the first coach to be fired would be Brandon Staley. And yes, I still think that is very much alive here, especially if Marco is correct and Dallas ends up opening up a can of whoop ass on his team. But there's a couple of other reasons why, and there's a couple of other amazing trends that all seem to go back to Brandon Staley, I think, at some particular point here. Number one, and you're absolutely right, Kelly, the Chargers' last 22 games, 17 of those 22 games have all been decided by less than 7 points. This is a team that plays in coin flip games. Whether they should or they shouldn't be, they end up in coin flip games. But here's the reason why, and this is just mind-blowing when I saw it. Get a load of this. Herbert is 32-22-1 in the first half against the number. He is 15-7 in the first half since the start of last year. In night games, primetime games like this, he's 11-2-1 in the first half against the number here. The problem happens is there is nobody worse in the second half than Herbert. And why do you think that is? Well, I'll give you 3 reasons. Brandon Staley, coaching. That is why. Guys, he is 15-34-5 in the second half against the number in his career. He is single-handedly the biggest money burner in second half numbers that we have in the NFL right now. And it all goes back. Great script, great first half, goes into the half with the lead, and what happens? They throw up all over themselves because the other team outcoaches them. I don't see, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I've got the Chargers doing what they have done and what Herbert has done. They're going to go into the break with the lead. So I'm going to take them in the first half, and for Marco's sake, they're going to blow that lead in the second half, and Dallas is going to come back and eventually win this game. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The numbers are too stark here. I'm going with the Chargers in the first half, which is what Herbert has excelled at since he's been in this league.
All right. I would have to agree with both of you. Let's hope for that outcome. Just by, Cowboys by 6, Marco. Everybody will be happy. Well, we know these glasses can only mean one thing, but before we get into TNA, I've got a special promo for all of you. All first-time customers receive 15% off anything and everything in their cart on their very first purchase. There is no cap, no limit. You can pick daily to long-term, and the discount is automatic with no coupon needed. So welcome to all of our new customers here at Wager Talk. And on that note, it is time for the nerd himself, the guy with the database, all of the numbers, the trends, angles, and situations. Let's bring him in, Mr. Ralph Michaels. Ralph Michaels, the king of the nerd charts. Sometimes these charts are really mind-blowing, wow numbers, and sometimes they're just learning opportunities. Talk to me about today's NFL chart.
Kelly, here's the question. Why would I share a chart that's only showing 50.7% against the spread? Well, it's to help people learn. How many times do you read, this team is in back-to-back home games? That's a positive. This team is in back-to-back road games. That's a negative situation. Well, I just want to point out, NFL teams in back-to-back road games since 2018 have gone 50.7%. So while it's not a bettable situation or a favorable betting situation, it's certainly not the negative that Joe Public or most people make it out to be. So the chart, and again, this chart will be in my PDF, which is posted every Thursday morning on my site. Early in the season, look at that, Kelly, games 2, 3, and 4. Teams playing back-to-back road games early in the season, very positive. Middle of the season, it becomes a negative. The 3/4 mark, there's some positivity there. And then the last couple weeks of the season, it has been a negative with those teams going 10-19 against the spread. So what I take out of this is this. Don't put too much negative. Don't give too many negative check marks for a team on back-to-back road games until it gets later in the season. And I'm going to have a situation, Kel, where teams back-to-back home facing a team back-to-back road. We'll have that for you in just 1 minute.
I love it. This is trends, angles, and we should probably add the S in there, situations, because that's what Ralph teaches us each and every week here on the TNA segment. So, Ralph, take it away for NFL Week 6.
Well, Kelly, I'm going to start with that. What if I told you this, going back to 2008, if you have a team on back-to-back home games against a team on back-to-back road games, and the lines are between a 6-point favorite and an 8-point dog. So if you have a huge favorite or a huge dog, the results aren't the same. But that 14-point gap, which covers most NFL games, those road teams, like the Cowboys, playing a second straight road game against a team playing their second straight home game, and the line between -6 to +8, the Cowboys are in a 58.6% ATS situation. FYI, the next time that occurs, the Cleveland Browns in Week 8 against Seattle. So back-to-back road teams between that line parameter, 59% against back-to-back home teams. I have 4 more quick hitters for you, Kelly. The first is this. Teams with revenge off a loss as an underdog, now a favorite. That would be the LA Rams. The LA Rams lost as a dog last week. They lost their last meeting against Arizona, and now they're a favorite. I did delete the COVID season. There were some weird results that COVID year, but teams like the Rams in that situation have covered 32.8% against the spread. So system number 2 says to fade the LA Rams. System number 3. Last week, we talked about pre-buy and post-buy and how post-buy records have not been a positive. Well, this one gets even better. If you have an NFL team off a bye and prior to their bye, they scored 21 points or less, like the Cleveland Browns, since 2012, those teams have gone only 28 and 52, 35% against the spread. System number 3. This is from game number 4 and higher. A home team won their last game as a dog, and both teams have win percentages greater than 70%. While not many people probably had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Lions both leading their division come October the 11th, but they are. Teams in that situation, like Tampa Bay, off a win as a dog at home, both teams a win percentage of 70% or higher, have gone 28-12, 70%. Not a huge sample size, but that goes all the way back to 1996. So a long enough sample size for me to bring it up here. And the final one, if you were outgained, win as a dog, and now you're a favorite. So you did get outgained last week, but you won the game outright. You were an underdog, and this week you're the favorite. 60% is the ATS mark since 2016. 55 wins, 37 losses. That is a 59.8% situation on the Saints. So system 1, Cowboys. System 2, fade the Rams. System 3, fade the Browns. System 4, play on Tampa Bay. System 5 says to play on the New Orleans Saints.
Ralph Michaels might have just got me enough information to get me over the hump to bet against our good friend Bobby the Bookie's Lions when I go to the game with him on Sunday. God, I'm a terrible friend. Thank you, Ralph, at Cal Sports LV on Twitter. Make sure you also check out Ralph's TNA segment on our college football edition of Bet On It. We're going to pivot now from trends and angles to those props. It's time for Prop Shop with Andy Lang. Andy Lang at Bump Sports on Twitter, just absolutely crushing the 5%ers there. In the prop market, as always, we're going over the Thursday night primetime game, a prop from my best bet on the show, and then getting a best bet from Andy. Before we get started, Andy, what do you have up at Wager Talk?
Well, we're looking to rebound. We finally lost our first 5% play of the NFL season. Wah, wah. We're still 4-1. We're on a 25-10 run. So we're excited to bounce back. We've got a really good play up for Thursday night football. Primetime games have been pretty good for us. And then we will again have a 5% play up this Sunday. And we are on a 5-1 run in college football. Ellie, we say we only need one play a week to turn a profit in college football. And we've done that. We're 5-1. So very excited about the weekend, doing really good in both footballs.
Good to hear it. I joked before we went on air that you and I are both in Vikings colors, and I was hoping you were going to give me a Vikings prop, but I do not have the guts to bet that team -2.5 at the Chicago Bears. So we're just going to pivot, talk about the Thursday night football game with another team that I don't want to back, the Denver Broncos. Tell me what you like in this one.
Well, it's a primetime game, but Sky Moore has not been a primetime player. Let's take his under 28.5 receiving. Kelly, he just looks like he has fallen out of the rotation. He has 2 catches for 11 yards combined the last 2 weeks. 6 players on the Chiefs have more catches than he does this season. He only has 4 targets combined the last 2 games. And let's not forget, this is a Denver team. This is the worst rush defense in the league. They're so bad. Isaiah Pacheco's rushing total for his prop last week was 56.5. This week it's 75.5. The books added 20 yards onto his prop because they think they're going to be able to run it that much. If you're Kansas City, you've got a banged up Travis Kelce. This just smells like a big Isaiah Pacheco, probably Jerick McKinnon. It's a big rushing night, and I don't think the Chiefs are going to need to pass a lot. And Sky Moore, listen, we all liked him in fantasy before the season. He was looked at as a breakout. It has just not happened. So let's fade Sky Moore. Let's take under his receiving yards.
Not I. That was about the only thing that I got a say in terms of our fantasy team this year. No Sky Moore, but we do have good old Calvin Ridley. Yuck. The most dropped passes in the NFL. That would be my contribution. Andy Lang, I am betting on an NFC West game in the afternoon on Sunday. Cardinals at Rams. Give me a best bet.
I think this is a really nice game offensively for the Rams. I'll take their over 27.5 team total. They got off to a hot start last week. Cooper Kupp looked like he was going to put up massive numbers, and then the second half this didn't go well, but they get an incredible matchup here, especially in the secondary. The Cardinals secondary, they're graded as the 3rd worst on PFF, and their pass rush is graded as the 6th worst. So expect Matthew Stafford to A, have time, and B, be able to tear apart this secondary. This Cardinals team, they just gave up 35 to San Francisco and 34 to Cincinnati. Kelly, they're struggling with the big name players. Last 2 games, Jamar Chase and Christian McCaffrey have put up 360 yards and 7 touchdowns just with those 2 players. So now who do they get to try and contain? Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Good luck to them. I don't see it happening. This is a Cardinals team riddled with injuries on defense. Now they got James Conner out. That offense did not look good. I think this is a big-time Rams offensive performance. Give me their over team total, 27.5.
I like it. I also think the Rams are going to be a very popular survivor pick this week. Okay, Andy, every week I ask you for a best bet. Let's hear it.
We're going Derrick Henry under 65.5 rushing. This is not looking like a great year for Derrick Henry. He's only gone over this total against the Chargers and the Bengals. The Chargers give up 4.1 yards per carry. The Bengals, they're a bad rush defense, 5.3 yards per carry. And then he went under 63 against the Saints, only 20 against the Browns, and only 43 against the Colts. He's lost his explosiveness. He only has 2 runs over 20 yards this season. And Tyjae Spears, he's looked great. They use him in the passing game. They use him in the running game. He's turned this backfield into a split backfield. And this Ravens team, they are great against the run. They only allow 3.6 yards per carry. Only 1 running back has rushed over this total, and that is, of all people, the resurging Zach Moss for the Indianapolis Colts. Fantasy superstar Zach Moss, only running back to get over this total. So I think this is another long day for Derrick Henry. Give me the under, 65.5 rushing yards.
under in the snooze fest that will be the London game for Andy Lang. He is Andy Lang at Bum Sports on Twitter. You can go to his homepage, wt.buzz/AL, to get all of those prop winners. We're going to kick Andy out of here, bring back in Marco and Joe because those dogs are barking. All right, Marco's Deli is not condemned. It's just closed for the holiday weekend. That means we have a trap game in NFL Week 6.
All right, Kelly, we're heading to Jacksonville for this one. We're going to take a look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've won 2 in a row. Does that mean they are back? Well, let's take a little deeper dive into those 2 wins. And both of them came across the pond in London. First game, they beat Atlanta. Atlanta, not used to going across the pond as Jacksonville is. We know every year Jacksonville plays there. And Atlanta had a rookie quarterback. That's a tough situation for them. And Jacksonville was coming off a beatdown the week before, so they were totally focused for that one. We'll give Jacksonville that win. They had all the edges. Then for the second game, they had even more edges. Even though they played a much better team, the Buffalo Bills, we talked about it. Buffalo was coming off their game of the year against the Miami Dolphins the week before and then had to travel to play in London. Now, we know that that's not a good situation for teams making that trek, but they were playing Jacksonville, who was playing their second game in London. But wait, they were already there. They had 2 weeks in London. First time we've seen that happen. And then we talked about it last week. That was a huge edge for Jacksonville. And as an underdog, they got the outright win. Now they're traveling back home. They got to come back across the pond and lay points at home. This is one of those games where these 2 teams already played. Second meeting of the season. Jacksonville won on the road. That was the first game of the season. And it was the first start for Anthony Richardson. Well, there won't be Anthony Richardson this week as he's still banged up and looks like we're going to get Gardner Minshew. Oh, wait, Gardner Minshew. Why does that name in Jacksonville sound familiar? Oh, that's right. He used to play there before Trevor Lawrence arrived. This is a big game for him. You know he wants to go and have a good outing. And let's be honest, Indianapolis has been one of the surprises so far this season at 3-2. They've played well. They've been competitive in all of their games. They're running the football well. That can eat clock. That can dominate time of possession. And I think they're going to be able to turn the tables on Jacksonville. And the line should tell you something also as far as the trap goes. I always like to look at road dogs who lost the first meeting at home. It's always a good situation. It's one of my favorite angles. Well, look at what the line was when they played in Indianapolis. Jacksonville was a 3.5-point favorite on the road. They're only a 4-point favorite at home, and they won by 10 in that game. What's that I smell? Something fishy? Yeah, that's right. I am taking Indianapolis plus the points. It's a trap. Don't fall for the Jacksonville trap. We're taking Indy. And go ahead. You can even sprinkle. I think they pull the outright upset.
A couple of comments there, Marco. Yeah, I was on the Colts in that first meeting, if you remember. And if Shane Steichen doesn't call a pass play 3 times on first or second and goal, whichever it was, they would have covered that game. But I agree with you. The Colts were very close to being my best bet for this week. And I also think Jags are going to be a very, very popular survivor pick. So I hope you're right and they lose outright. Moving along to what I thought was going to be Fade Joe Public, but that's the college edition, and I'm really glad because Fade Joe Public would have been getting crushed this year, Joe, because the public is absolutely murdering the NFL 5 weeks in, and you know what that means for me. I'm getting murdered. So good thing this segment is, are you high? Because I need a joint.
You see that?
Yeah, I see that on TV? Because that's how bad this season has been.
If I got to watch Mario Cristobal one more time. We're all getting high here. Let me go with this here.
Don't show. That's the college football.
I don't care. It's so bad he should encompass both shows because that's how terrible he is. Let us look. Now, last week we weren't high enough and that was dealing with the Jets in Denver, and that turned out to be good as that game went flying over the total. This week, I'm going to look at two teams in which the easy answer would be, you're way too high, but not so fast. I'm not high enough again with the Saints and the Texans, and we're talking about a Saints team now that I believe has dealt with, 4 games? All their games, I don't think have gone over 37 points. But that was because usually they have been one-sided affairs. So I don't think it's going to be one-sided here. And I think that the Saints have some issues on defense. Namely, they can't get to the quarterback. So what are they playing now? Well, believe it or not, they're playing one of the best passing offenses, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but with C.J. Stroud and company and Houston, one of the best passing offenses in the league, especially this guy. I mean, there's not enough can be said about what C.J. Stroud is doing, including not throwing any INTs. New Orleans is one of the bottom 5 teams in getting any sort of pressure on the quarterbacks, which is going to allow this kid to sit back there and pick this defense apart. This ain't Mac Jones they're playing here. I do, however, think now with Kamara back in a couple of weeks under his belt, and we saw it a little bit there against that Patriots defense there where Derek Carr, the shoulder, obviously feeling a little bit better. I do think New Orleans is going to be able to put up some points, and Kamara is going to be able to run in this game here. They sold out the Texans last week to stop the run against Atlanta, and guess what Ritter did? Lit him up for 315 yards there. So I do think that New Orleans and Carr are going to have some success throwing the ball and running the ball. And I think Houston is also going to have a ton of success being able to pass on this New Orleans team. So when it all comes down to it, it was 41. It looks like it's up to 42.5 now. And I agree with it. This is going to be the first over that New Orleans has played in. I think both teams are going to put some points, and ultimately we're going to get much higher than the 42.5 in this game.
Interesting. It's like fade Joe Public and Are You High in 1? Because 5-0 to the under for the New Orleans Saints, you know that is exactly where everybody's going back to the well.
Yep.
All right, Barco, you know what time it is.
I hear the dogs come.
Oh, there's some dog. We just can't get them on there.
Oh, all right. Dog was taking a nap. He woke up. They're here now, and we are going to take the Tennessee Titans. And this is a spot where I want to know who Baltimore pissed off in the scheduling department. Guys, they are playing their 3rd straight road game, okay? You don't see that in the NFL anymore. Not only are they playing their 3rd straight road game, they're playing it after playing physical division rival Cleveland 2 weeks ago, their arch rival, and if you've ever watched a Pittsburgh-Baltimore game, they are as physical as they possibly could be. The two teams literally don't like each other. So you're coming off another hard-fought game, physical, and you lost it when you blew a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter to a team that has no offense, the Steelers, and now you got to play on the road for a 3rd straight week. Oh, wait a minute. We're not done. That 3rd road game is across the pond in London. Thank you. And oh, did you happen to look? It's not only their 3rd straight road game, it's their 4th road game in 5 weeks. This is just horrible for them. Fatigue's got to set in. You've got to be banged up. And let's talk about that offense for Baltimore. That's all we heard about is, they pulled up the Brinks truck, unloaded the money for Lamar Jackson. They went out and bought him some fancy new toys to play with. Where's the offense? They're not scoring points. I'm looking for Tennessee. Both teams are coming off a loss. When you have two teams playing bad, what do? I'm going to take the dog. And that's going to be Tennessee here. And they can run the football where that can shorten the game. And Baltimore, as I said, hasn't been able to have that explosive game to pull away from teams. I'm taking the points with Tennessee. Tennessee defensively has held all 5 opponents to 27 points or fewer. Nobody's lit them up this year. Let's go ahead. I see this as a field goal game. let's call it Tennessee, 23-20. And if you're on the West Coast, sorry, you got to get up pretty early once again on Sunday morning.
I don't know if it's good news or bad news that Marco and I agree a lot. I actually don't think the total's going to be quite that high in London. Maybe 17-16 final with the Titans covering and hopefully the Ravens, my Super Bowl 20-1 winner. Then we might as well set on complete fire. Joe Raineri, how are your Super Bowl bets looking before we get into your barking dog?
Well, I mean, 49ers are looking pretty decent, so that's good here. Seattle's got an interesting shot coming up this week, too. So my dark horse to take down the 49ers probably is not going to happen, but at least it could get interesting if there's a injury or two. I'll tell you, my ticket on my barking dog is not looking great, but I do have bigger aspirations here, and hopefully we will be able to at least get a few more wins before it's all said and done, before I actually have to burn this ticket, as I'll be looking at the New York Jets, minus Aaron Rodgers, obviously, and as bad and as disgusting as this is, and it is, it does feel like this is the kind of spot we're going to get a little bit of a letdown from Philadelphia, whose schedule, by the way, coming up is absolutely brutal, and yet they got to go to MetLife, they got to lay 7, and they got to take on a Jets team that's getting more and more confidence each and every game here. So 7 on a home dog in a non-conference game, it feels like maybe, just maybe, this is a spot where come the fourth quarter, Philadelphia is trying to figure out what the hell are we doing and what is going on? Why are we losing this game? I do think the Jets at +7 in this spot at this point in the season on a 5-0 Philadelphia team, while everybody's expecting them to just blow out the Jets and run them over, that's great. I tend to think that maybe this spot lends for a possible barking dog and maybe a little comeback to reality here for the Philadelphia Eagles. So as disgusting and as much as I'll be holding my eyes and nose, still taking the Jets and the touchdown.
Yeah, Joe, I've been waiting for this Eagles team to come back to reality for weeks now, and it has not worked out well for me. So on that note, I hope you're right, but I am not going to be joining you on the Jets. Maybe the following week with Miami might be a spot for me to finally cash a ticket betting against those birds. We'll leave it at that. Coming up next, Las Vegas Cris is going to join us and teach us a thing or two. I have a tweet that I'd like to address with him. Each and every week, we do a segment with Las Vegas Cris where maybe we learn a thing or two. At Las Vegas Cris on Twitter, at Vegas Synergy as well over at Wager Talk. Cris, you put out a tweet this week, and I want to discuss it because as we know, this year has been quite the CLV year for myself. And I make some jokes about closing line value and its importance and sometimes its lack of importance. But we know long-term, it is important to get the best of the number. But I wanted you to discuss your NFL tweet.
I track for NFL, since I'm an originator, I track everything possible with what I do in the NFL. And one of the important things, as you referenced, is having closing line value, because that's a measurement of success. For originators, it's a little bit different, though. As a bettor, you really need that CLV. For an originator, you want to just track it. And here's an example why CLV is or is not important to certain people. I track each year how many plays I made and what my record is when I get negative CLV. So what's really odd about it, and why I tweeted it out and I'm making it visible so that other people can, so it's documented, so to speak, because some way, somehow, in the hardest and most efficient market, my winning percentage is actually higher at 62% than it is on my regular bets. So it's just an anomaly, but it's a lot of games. It's over 125 games or so. So it's enough of a sample size where you can't dismiss it, but we want to keep on tracking that. It is important, Kelly, though. You don't want to be getting the worst of the number, especially in football, or lower scoring sports, it's critical that you're on the right side of that closing line.
Absolutely. We know this, but it is also critical to have college students not throw pick sixes, but that's beside the point. Cris,
But
you think of something?
it's kind of changing, Kelly, because it used to be critical. It's something that you want to monitor, but I don't think it's the life and death of whether you're going to win or lose, like some people proclaim it to be, if that makes any sense.
It does. But back previously, let's say I took 7.5 of the dog. It closed 6. I felt pretty good before that game kicked off, right? I took 5.5 with the Colts this year. It closed 3.5. I was sitting pretty Sunday morning until, well, it did not end up working out in my favor. So that's where I think kind of I've been conditioned to not assume, but to feel well, knowing I got the best of the number. And that's why I started making the joke about said trophies, because it's kind of like a participation trophy. It's like, thanks for coming out. You still lost. But I agree, in the long-term sample size, how important it is. And now we're going to pivot to... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Don't feel bad, though, because I had monster CLV the worst week of the NFL, my one bad week. I had monster CLV on everything. So when I tweeted out CLV Hotel, I'm staying, checking in. So it's just no guarantee you're going to win at all.
Very, very true. It's not a metric of winning, but again, over, the course of a decade, if I had been keeping track of my bets back in, 2013, 2014, it might be a lot more beneficial than just this year's sample size. Cris, each and every week we do a 5-minute segment with Cris, and that's usually talking teasers. We're talking moneyline parlays. This week, I wanted to address teasers in particular and why you think maybe the teaser market isn't so good this week, because I've got Packers, Texans, Commanders, Chargers, Bears, lots of opportunities here for good teaser spots. Not necessarily long teasers, because some of those totals are a little higher, but at least getting some of those dogs up and over the touchdown, particularly at home.
Well, those are all good teasers that you can make. But as I referenced in the past, for me, I don't want to bet teasers unless I'm willing to bet that game at the regular point spread. I don't just throw them out there because they're Wong teasers or because they are acceptable teasers. So that's why they're a little limited for me this week. But I do like the Seattle side and the Washington side and the Houston side the best. But I want to tell you, here's an oddity that we had this week, and this should interest people that are having trouble finding reasonable teaser prices. Some places are charging absurd amounts. It's getting harder and harder to find -120 teasers. Let's look at this week. You have San Francisco -7. You have Philadelphia -7. Normally, you could pay -120 and get down to the -1s. So, but look at this option that you have. Even if you can lay -120, I like this other option. Both of them on the money line, -305 and -205. That's a different one. -305 and -320 comes out to -126. It's -290, -305 comes out to -126. But that gets you down to the pick. So for an extra 6 cents, you're getting all the way down to the pick. And if you only have a place that has -125, 130, 135 teasers, well, now you're getting a bargain. So it's something to consider. Home team teasers are not necessarily the most profitable group of teasers, just so you know. They still do okay, but they're not the best.
All right, quick math lesson there from Cris. Very good points. I know it's very hard to find -110 teaser spots, and even 120 is kind of becoming sparse these days. So definitely check with your book. As we state all the time, check your rules. And if you have a question, just ask. Walk up to the counter and they will tell you the price they charge on 2-team 6-point teasers in the NFL. Cris, before I let you go, I need a best bet.
Well, I lost with this, but I was very efficient on my parlay last week because I lost both sides. So there's no remorse. There was no getting out of that one. So I kind of like, if you're going to lose one, might as well lose them both. But I lost with the Buffalo-Baltimore parlay, but I won every week. We've got the Houston and the Jets they covered last week, and I'm not going to give a teaser this week. I'm going to keep that perfect streak alive, and I am instead going to do Baltimore on the money line with San Francisco on the money line, and that pays plus 159. I'm sorry, that you have to lay minus 102. And another suggestion that I have is add Philadelphia for a third one for less, and you get plus 159 on that one.
Good stuff, as always, from Cris. We're going to say goodbye to Cris for this week. Next week, if you have a question for him, feel free to tweet us. We'll jump in and answer all of your questions because here on Wager Talk, we love those teachable moments. I have some bad news, and I know you guys are all going to be mad at me in the comment section, so let me have it. It's all my fault. I apologize. BR, Ace, the great gambler, is not going to be joining us on this week's Bet On It. He had a very long day yesterday filming Contender Series and had to film Fight Pass today with UFC. I will see if maybe he will be so kind as to do a maybe selfie style video with some of his gold for all of you. But instead, a VR, I brought you guys a nice promo. First-time customers at Wager Talk receive 15% off anything and everything in their cart on their first purchase. There is no limit. You can pick daily packages, long-term packages, and the discount is automatic with no coupon code needed. So hopefully you guys hate me a little less after that one, and even a little less than that after I give you guys my best bet. So let's get into it. You know, we talked about this Arizona Cardinals team earlier in the show, and I said during my Arizona Cardinal preview that there was going to be a lot of times that I was looking to bet on this team, and everybody thought I was a little crazy, but they've had some good spots here. Jonathan Gannon, what do we know about him? He was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles last year, so we kind of thought we'd see maybe a better defensive performance from the Cardinals, and while they showed us some moments of greatness, kind of falling off the wagon, loss at San Francisco, 14-point loss to the Bengals, who really showed nothing offensively prior to that game. I think we kind of are starting to see the downfall of the Cardinals that we expected to see at the start of the season. I made a joke last week. I was on the Rams against the Eagles. And I said, hey, since when did Sean McVay forget that he was a gambler? A couple weeks ago, you guys were mad he kicked the field goal, and then last week, I was mad that he didn't actually try to score when the back door was open there. Rams 11-2 straight up against the Cardinals. I think they're going to be a very popular survivor pick, and I will probably be using them in most of my entries. But I expect this Rams defense to step up in a big way, put a ton of pressure on Josh Dobbs and get the most of him. But more importantly, I expect a big game from Stafford. As you guys remember, during Prop Shop, Andy Lang spoke about this offense and being able to exploit the Arizona Cardinals defense, and I expect more of the same. I made this game 34-24 LA Rams. So let's lay that 7 here with the Rams, and let's just hope for some good things, guys, because these best bets this year have been on an absolute utter roller coaster ride. Marco, your best bets, though, they've been cashing at a really great clip.
Well, the NFL one didn't cash last week. I had a stink bomb last week in the NFL, and Bill Belichick said after the game, start over. So we're going to start our streak over with the NFL best bets as well. And we are going to head down to Florida, and I'm going to go to Tampa Bay. I know, Kelly, you've been there a few times this year, and I think this is the week you should go because I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to deliver us a big win. The Lions come to town, and sorry, Johnny Detroit, I'm going to be fading your Detroit Lions. But, you know, they're sitting at 4-1. And to be honest, coming in, that's not a big surprise because next to the New York Jets, there wasn't a team in the preseason that was getting more hype than the Lions. And they've lived up to it so far. Tampa Bay, nobody saw this coming. I mean, how can you go from Tom Brady at quarterback to Baker Mayfield and expect to see a team at 3-1? They're coming off their bye week. So they've had 2 weeks to figure out a way to slow down this Detroit Lion offense. And to be honest, the defense played quite well for Tampa. If you take away that Philadelphia game that they gave up 25 points, the other 3 games, they've held their opponents to 17 points or less. What do we always say? Give me points, give me the better defense, I'm going to be lining up there. And I look at Detroit last week, they put up 42 on a Carolina team, but they were aided by 3 Carolina turnovers. Again, don't want to beat that stat to death, but when you're +3 in turnovers in the NFL, you are supposed to win. I'm looking at the fact that Carolina scored 24 points. I think Tampa Bay will be able to score points against the Lions. The Lions got a big game coming up next week against Baltimore. They can look past this one a little bit. I don't like them on the road laying points. I'm going to take Tampa. I'm calling for the outright upset here. 2 weeks to prepare. Let's go Tampa, 27-23. Don't forget to sprinkle on that best bet.
Oh, Marco, gosh, I'm praying for you. Open 4.5. Bobby the bookie called me, said he had extra tickets for me, said I would be there, and I still can't bet the Bucs because I've been to a lot of their games. And 3-9-1 in their last 13 home games. Todd Bowles, Baker Mayfield, God love you. Hopefully, good luck to you. I'm not doing it. I'm done betting these crappy teams that I have been facing the last few weeks. Joe, on that note, can I please have your best bet? Something I can stomach a little more.
Well, I said last week on the show here when Marco talked about Cincinnati, and I said I'm not buying it until I see it. So I'm going to reserve judgment until I see that there is any healing going on with Joe Burrow, because up till last week, it's been a horror show there. It just has not worked. And sure enough, and Marco called it here on the show last week with Cincinnati there, and I was a little bit hesitant because I wanted to see it with my eyes, and guess what? We saw it with the eyes, guys, and what we saw was shades. Listen, I'm not going to jump and go crazy because it is still Arizona on a lot of levels, but the truth is he was way more accurate, way more in rhythm. He was moving way more than we saw. So all the signs were that, in fact, Joe Burrow might be getting a little bit better. At the very least, they have figured out how to work with whatever that calf injury is and whatever degree it is. They have figured out how to make it work because that looked a lot more like the Cincinnati team of a couple of years past. And, oh, yeah, by the way, here we are, right? Week 6 now. And this is usually the time of year that Cincinnati kicks it into another gear. And now, after that win out west, they'll come home. They'll welcome in Seattle, who had the bye. In fact, the last time that we saw Seattle, they were so busy, patting Geno Smith on the back for his 110 yards passing he had against the Giants, which might have been absolutely the worst performance of the night, except for the fact that, oh, yeah, the Giants allowed them to sack Daniel Jones 10 times. So before you want to talk about a win that wasn't even remotely as dominant as everyone makes them out to seem, I'm not buying Seattle in this spot coming off a bye. I think Cincinnati figured some things out. I think Geno Smith is going to be under duress. And let's not forget, Zach Taylor is kind of a McVay protege there. So their offense mirrors the Rams offense, which has given Seattle's defense absolute fits. It already did this year. It has in years past. It's a small number, and I think it's got a double-digit win written all over it. So I'll lay the 3 with Cincinnati. I think they show that Cincinnati's, in fact, maybe their death was a little premature. They're going to roll Seattle at home this week.
I like that one a little bit more, but I am still weary about this Bengals team. I did not get to the window with them last week. I, too, did not trust Marco. I needed to see it for myself, and oh boy, did I see it. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show as much as we always do, hanging out with each and every one of you, from Joe, Ralph, Andy, Las Vegas, Cris, and myself. Good luck in this week in the NFL. And until next week, let's bet on it.